Here at Flux Labs, we do all kinds of projects, anything from blaster integrations to shop quality of life projects. So we're always on the lookout for new innovative machines to help us accomplish these tasks. Much like 3D printers, CNC machines, vacuum formers, or in today's case, resin 3D printers. Think of them as tools. Now, 3D printing is obviously a big part of many projects here at Flux Labs. However, standard FDM printing has its drawbacks. One huge drawback is resolution, the quality of the print. In today's FDM world, we actually have some extremely good print quality. But if you want to get more high fidelity prints, you're going to have to make the switch over to SLA. Because FDM printers actually, no matter how well they're dialed in, will still leave slight layer lines on the print. In addition, the nozzle sizes, where the plastic melts and comes out, you never can get that extreme level of detail that you'd see on, say, a tabletop miniature or just a very detailed small little model. Fortunately, we have an amazing printer sent in from UniFormation known as the GKtwo. This is a 10.3-inch 8K resin printer with some amazing performance. For the purpose of this video, we will be showcasing high fidelity models to demonstrate this printer's capability. And if you're a normal viewer to the DrFlux channel, we will be going into a special project for the 3D printed Nerf space, so make sure to watch to the end of this video. So we're gonna need your help identifying and testing what I think is going to be a pretty successful experiment that will basically be good for the community. With all that said, let's jump right in. Now, before we get started, I want to give a special thanks to Rogue AI. Now, Rogue AI has not had any experience with resin 3D printing, so this entire process was new to them. Now, the idea of this was that they didn't have any experience, so this is kind of like a new user and how they would feel experiencing the GK2 for the first time. So I think it actually really helped for the review. So let's go ahead and get into the first part, which is the unboxing. Now, the packaging and opening of the box was pretty straightforward. Everything fits in the box nicely, it was packed very well, and it was kind of like opening one of the newer high-end series of FDM printers. So the feeling was very refined, if you will. The included instructions were very intuitive, a little bit vague here and there, but the pictures and the arrows helped a lot. Setup was actually pretty minimum. It was pretty much all put together in the box ready to go. Not a lot to describe on the setup process. Everything was plug and play. And we have to talk about the Bamboo Labs because we have, multiple X1 carbons. This kind of felt similar. The setup was really easy. And just to be clear, that's a good thing. Once again, just feels like a really refined, nice product. Included in the bag were some instructions and some cards. And on one of these cards was a subscription to a slicing service that has default settings for the GK2, along with a quick start guide with how to slice and export files. So really helpful. This was a wonderful leg up as none of us had any clue on how to do this type of process. So that was nice. One really cool thing we found in the bag was a Wi-Fi adapter. This allows for connection to 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi and allows for remote dropping of files, which is really helpful. This is way more convenient than putting files on an SD card and running back and forth from your computer to your printer. Also, there was no need to mess around with firmware updates and all that kind of stuff. We've definitely had our fair share of headaches with FDM printers and firmware updates. Now, it is worth noting that the UI for dragging and dropping these files wasn't the most easiest to understand for some users, but the whole team here at Flux Labs has a background in IT, so kind of figured it out. When the Wi-Fi adapter is plugged into the printer and hooked up to the Wi-Fi, it creates a file share that is only discoverable via typing its IP address into the file browser. Then you can drag and drop files into there and get printing. We also noticed that the printer did not ship with any starter resin. Now, one of our Flux Labs members does have a SLA printer down at the shop. We, however, haven't been using it because it's not ours. Now, they did have some resin that they allowed us to borrow, so we were able to use that resin, but also they did mention that typically these printers come with resin, so just keep that in mind. And also when we get FDM printers, there's always some type of spool or trial something in there. So just want to put it out there that yes, GK2 that we received didn't have any resin. Now that I think about it, this could be due to the fact that resin is more of a hazmat, and maybe it makes shipping these units a little bit more difficult or cost or expensive or whatnot. But anyways, we started by leveling and verifying the bed was squared up. Turns out it's pretty much ready to go right out of the box. and it can do some incredible prints. So Rogue AI went over, sliced up a model of a really nice death claw, and then exported it via wirelessly to the connected printer, which is really cool. So now at the printer, we have loaded resin up to the fill line, and we had a mild crisis. When the bottle said shake well, Rogue AI took it a little bit too serious and shook it a lot, and it turned out it made it kind of frothy and bubbly, so don't need to shake it that much. But with that said, we went ahead and hit go, and the print started. Now, like I said earlier, we do have a member that does SLA printing, and they said, hey, when it's printing, you're gonna hear it kind of lift up, and you should hear kind of a click as it comes off the bed. So we started this print and we didn't hear that. So we got a little bit anxious and nervous, and that person wasn't around, and we're like, oh no, is this thing working? Because, you know, the thing about these printers is you have your vat of resin, and once the plate goes into it, you don't see the printer. So you're just sitting there just patiently waiting, and so we got nervous. So we pulled it out, and unfortunately it was printing just fine. It's just quiet. It's a very efficient and quiet machine. So just want to put that out there because, you know, maybe that'll save someone some headache. So we cleared the print bed and set everything back up and let the GKtwo work on the print throughout the night. We had to go home, came back in the morning, and there was a beautiful, highly detailed death claw. Now this model, first off, I'll leave any information to where we got this model. It is just beautiful, and to see the quality and the detail in this thing, that's why I base coated it with a light primer, and I used one of GW's color contrast. This one right here is the Gore Grunta Fur, so we wanted a brown because, you know, claws are typically brown, and wow, this just looks beautiful. You can see where all the details are pulled out by the contrast paints, which really shows on camera like how amazing and high fidelity these models can print. So the next part of the experience is the post-processing. Now, with no experience, this is where things get interesting. So the printer didn't come with a curing station. Essentially, you need a rinse area, a drying area, and then a curing station, which basically shoots UV lights into the print to essentially cure all the leftover residual resin on the model. Now, you don't want to cure this when you first pull it out because then you lose all your quality. So you got to process it in a certain flow. Now, we rinsed the parts in iso alcohol, drying with a large heat gun. Turned out that one of our members does have a drying unit, and then we set it into the curing unit. Now, I have heard rumors that you can make your own curing units. I think people do this with like nail salon UV lights, and I mean, there are ways to kind of do it yourself, or you can always just pick one up online. This also brings us to our next point, and this is just resin printing in general, whether it be the resin parts, which you can get resin that's not as stinky, but the cleanup with the alcohol is very, it's pretty stinky. So make sure you got good ventilation, you know, don't do it in a closed little room. Now, I know there's different alternatives out there for low odor stuff, but just keep that in mind. You know, some ventilation, maybe a fan blowing air out of your house or whatnot. Now, the model turned out beautifully, like I said, and once again, Rogue AI had no background in resin printing. So to go from box, unpackaged, setup, sliced, printed, processed print, to here you go. And by the way, we didn't have any failed prints. Like, it was pretty much like, because I've seen a lot of times you get stuff, you got to run it through a few times, do a calibration thing, do a couple prints, kind of dial in your setting. There was none of that. It just like, we unboxed it, got it set up, and then boom, beautiful model, pretty amazing. So with that said, this is not resin specifically for this printer by this manufacturer, so we'd love to see what their resin would look like out of this printer. Still probably gonna be amazing. So after running through setup and using the UniFormation GKtwo, it was a very pleasant experience. If you have little to no experience with 3D printing in general, I feel this is a really good printer to start off with. Just keep in mind, you do need those post-processing things. Like I was saying earlier, you need some way to rinse it, some way to dry it, and then of course, cure it. So where does that leave us with the 3D printed Nerf community? This is where I want to talk about a project that I'm really excited about. I've been thinking about this for a long time. So the idea with this project is we basically design, you know, a group or a batch of scar barrels that gradually increase or decrease the spin on the dart. We want to basically throw them at different spring and plunger tube combinations to kind of get a good optimal setting for 100 FPS, 150 FPS, and of course 200. You know, I think that'd be a good range. Essentially with this spring, this plunger tube, and this twist applied to the end, you're gonna get the most optimal performance and basically do some tests. Go ahead down in the comment section, let us know if you think this is a good idea, if you have any other ideas in regards to this type of testing. I personally think it'd be good information for the hobby. And I don't know, I'd like to know what all of you have to say. Well, in summary, I want to thank UniFormation for sending in their GKtwo. We had a great time learning this printer, and we have a lot of cool projects in store. As always, I'm DrFlux. I want to thank you for watching today. Be safe and happy printing.